Hey, what's up? I know what you're thinking. Hey, Bri, banana bread is basically cake, right? Wrong! It's chewy, dark, mature, and when made properly, full of an exotic, subtle sweetness that you just could never get from cake. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make what I think is very good tasting banana bread, along with a more maxed out variation that's a little bit closer towards dessert. To get started, I'll need some bananas, specifically old ones. I bought these about 8 days ago before I went to Scandinavia, and I basically let them rot in my pantry that whole time. At this point, about 50% of their peels are blackened and they're mega soft and all spotted up. When you peel one open, also, you can see that the flesh in there is pretty mushy. That means that time has allowed all of the resistant starches in the form of fiber in the banana to convert into sugar. For now, I'm gonna give these a peel and then flip 560 grams or about 6 large peeled bananas worth of flesh into a medium bowl, and then I'll grab a fork and give them a mash. But Bri, what if I don't have a hand of very old bananas on hand? Well, I've got a few options for how you can shortcut that, but I'll get to those in just a second. Once my bananas are mushed up into a pulp like this, I'm gonna drop a whole stick of butter or 115 grams into a small saucepan and then gently melt that over low heat. While that melts, I'll get the rest of my wet ingredients into the bowl along with the banana paste. The first of which is gonna be 3 large eggs. I'll give those a little scramble first so they're easier to incorporate with everything that's coming next. In those go, then 120 grams of dark brown sugar and 70 grams of molasses. I like molasses here because it's less perceivably sweet than regular sugar, and it brings a noticeable addition of both moisture and dark, interesting flavor that both brown or white sugar just don't have. Next, in goes 5 grams of vanilla extract, 140 grams of sour cream, but unsweetened Greek yogurt would also work, then 40 grams of olive oil, then I'll grab my melted but not super hot butter and drizzle that in. In most cake-like baked goods, I really prefer to use a combination of both saturated and unsaturated fat. The flavor comes from the saturated fat usually, or butter in this case, and the tender, moist crumb is going to be coming from the oil, or the unsaturated fat. Once I've got this whisked up into a homogeneous brown soup, I'm going to set this bowl of wet ingredients aside, and then I'll grab a fresh bowl for my dry. Into that goes 420 grams of all-purpose flour, 12 grams of salt, 15 grams of baking powder, and 6 grams of baking soda. I prefer to use the combination of both leaveners here to get some extra lift because these super ripe bananas make for a very wet batter, and extra lift helps us avoid the dreaded gummy collapsed bottom. Once that's all whisked up, I'll combine the entirety of that bowl into the wet one. Now I'll stir that to combine real quick, but clearly the whisk is not the best tool here, so I'll switch this up to a stiff spatula and then gently fold this until I can no longer see clumps of dry flour. Don't overmix this and don't use a stand mixer. The stand mixer will whip air into the eggs and that will create a artificially high rise in the oven that will be followed by a collapse after baking. Next, I'm gonna grab my vessel. For this, I'm gonna use a 1.5 pound loaf pan. This is what I use for most pan yeasted breads on this channel, and if you want it, I'll link to it in the description below. It's 10 inches long and 5 inches wide, so pretty big. I'll throw a scaled down version of this recipe in the description if you only have, say, an 8-inch loaf pan. Next, I'll spray the pan with a little olive oil spray. Then I'll lay in a trimmed up piece of parchment paper that's just short of 10 inches. Then I'm going to spray the paper and each end of the pan to ensure no stickage happens. And then in goes my batter. If you're asking yourself where the walnuts are and is it even banana bread without walnuts, Bri? Well, personally, I don't love biting into something firm when eating a nice, soft, chewsome piece of banana bread, so I keep it purely about the banana, no nuts. But hang tight because I have a fully maxed out version that's full of texture coming up in just a second. From here, I'll tap this on the counter to level it out 3 times and then load it into a 350F oven to bake for 60 to 70 minutes. In the meantime, I'm really excited to be working with Omaze to offer you guys the chance to win a $130,000 custom tiny home from True Form Tiny and to help support a great cause, the National Park Foundation. So just go to omaze.com/Lagerstrom to enter for your chance to win. I honestly can't tell you how many hours Lauren and I have spent watching tiny house YouTube. We always run the scenarios in our head to see like what layout we would choose and if we could even still make cooking videos working in such a tiny kitchen. But whatever you would choose to do with your tiny home, whether that's live in it full time to be debt free or just rent it out, the best part about entering the sweepstakes is that you're actively supporting the National Park Foundation. They help preserve America's national parks for present and future generations. They work to protect wildlife, parklands, they preserve history and culture, and they connect people with the legitimate wonder that is the national parks. It's really worth preserving. So to enter for your chance to win a $130,000 custom tiny home from True Form Tiny, go to omaze.com/Lagerstrom and enter now. You can submit your entry in just a few clicks and donations support the amazing work of the National Park Foundation. Thank you, Omaze. Back to the time lapse. I think it's probably best to err on the side of more bake time here than less, because since these bananas are so wet and pasty, the batter is going to take a pretty long time to set up. And after 70 minutes in total, I'm going to pull this one out so we can take a look. It's risen quite well and has taken on some really beautiful dark chestnut colors. And it smells aggressively of roasty banana. For now though, this needs to cool for quite a long time, like at least 2 hours. So quickly, let's talk about what to do when you don't have week-old mushy bananas. Option 1 is to take a less ripe banana and just put it in the fridge for 24 to 48 hours. This is not exactly quick, but it does require less than a week's worth of foresight and does a great job of converting the starch to sugar and breaking down all that fiber. Flavor is pretty good, but like I said, this isn't super quick. The second and much quicker option is to take some less than fully ripe bananas like these ones and then lay them out on a sheet tray. As you can see, that banana fiber is fully intact and these are still pretty firm. So to get them bread ready, I'm going to throw them into a 450F oven to roast for about 25 minutes. This is going to both concentrate their sugar and soften all that fiber so the bread isn't weirdly firm. After 25 minutes, I'll take them out, throw them into a bowl, and give them a mash with a fork. As you can see, these are pretty close texturally to the week-old black bananas, but there's still a touch of that fruit fiber holding on. That's really hard to get rid of, and time is really the only method that I've found that can fully soften a banana into a pure wet pulp. I'll also mention that you probably should taste this paste at some point to see if it needs a touch more sugar or water. I added about 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar and about a quarter cup of water. To show you a true comparison though, I mixed up a second batch of the exact same recipe, but used the roasted bananas instead of the aged ones. Take a look at the two batters next to each other. The fully ripened banana batter is way more brown, and the roasted banana batter is greener, paler, and just less vibrant looking overall. After it's baked, the same holds true. I think of it kind of like yeasted bread in that the less fermented it is, the less dynamic and dark the crust is once it's baked. We'll get back to this one in just a second though. For now, I'm going to grab the first loaf that we baked and cut it in half. As you can see, the inside is beautifully golden brown and fully baked. There's no gummy bottom, and that means that we leavened it properly, baked it fully, and let it fully set before we gave it a cut. Sure, there's a lot of options for things you can add to banana bread, like walnuts or chocolate chips, and while those are sick and I love them, the banana bread I really crave and enjoy the most is just about pure, simple banana flavor and soft but not too soft, chew-some texture. The crumb is clearly super frickin' moist here, and the flavor is sweet, but just barely. This bread is mature, it's subtle, and confident in its simplicity. And here's a shot of the oven roasted banana bread next to the aged one. As you can see, the oven roasted one got a little gummy on the bottom, and overall the color is just a little bit less vibrant. Flavor wise, it's clear that aging the bananas leads to a more pronounced banana flavor, but to be honest, the same day bananas really hold their own. I'd say they're like 11% less banana-y than the aged ones, but texture and overall enjoyment of these two breads are both super high. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice the difference if they were next to each other, especially if they were to eat them like I usually do. That's spread with a huge smear of whipped salted butter or just unwhipped cultured butter, and then a huge dose of flaky sea salt on top. If you haven't had banana, salt, and butter before, it's right up there with chocolate, salt, and olive oil, as in it's very good and you should try it. Okay, I mentioned at the top of this video that I would show you guys a more maxed out version of this banana bread that's a little bit closer to dessert. So here it is. I'm calling this one Everything Banana Bread. It has chocolate, nuts, and a blend of delicious, nutritious seeds. The first step is to toast the nuts and seeds. That's 100 grams of walnuts, 20 grams of white sesame seeds, 20 grams of poppy seeds, 20 grams of hemp seeds, and 20 grams of flax seeds. Feel free to mix and match the seeds and nuts here as you see fit. Just try and keep it in the ballpark of 200 grams so that it still fits in the pan. Now I'm going to throw these into a 350F oven to toast them up for about 15 minutes, and once the walnuts and sesame have taken on a nice golden hue like this, I'm going to pull them out. Same as before, I'm going to combine my aged bananas with eggs, sour cream, brown sugar, etc. I'll whisk together my wet, then I'll put the dry ingredients into the wet, whisk those to combine, and once I have a nice wet batter like this, in goes my cooled toasted seeds and nuts. I'll use a spatula to fold those together, and once they are, I'll top that with 150 grams of chopped dark chocolate. This stuff is about 75% 95% cacao, and it came pre-chopped into nice little cubes. From there, I'll pop this into a parchmented and sprayed pan and bake it for at least 70 minutes. Once it's baked, I'll pull it out and rest it for at least 6 hours, but preferably overnight. The next day, you can see we've got a fully loaded, super flavorful, super textural, chocolatey treat. It's toasty from the nuts and seeds and so delicious from the pops of melty chocolate. This one's perfect to pack up for a snack on the backside of a hike because, you know, seeds and stuff are good fuel for the bot. So that's how you make very good tasting banana bread. It looks simple, but I can assure you the flavor on both the classic and the everything is dynamic, intense, and very craveable. I'm thrilled with the result here, and I'm going to be making both again soon. I hope you do too. Let's eat this thing.